uses, the different applications of CN and network hardware aspects. In this lecture, we'll start with the network software aspects and the reference models. Let me quickly go through it. So the kind of topologies, the kind of network devices, connecting devices we have discussed along with their functions. So let us continue with the hardware aspects of physical medium. So to make a network, what sort of medium that you are using to connect the devices? So whether it is a wide medium or wireless medium, if it is a wide medium, what sort of cable you are using, whether it is a coaxial cable, twisted pair cable. So in the twisted pair cable, you have shielded twisted pairs and unshielded twisted pair cables, and also you have optical fiber cables. This is with respect to wide medium. In the case of wireless medium, you should look at the kind of frequencies that you use, whether it is millimeter waves for like 5G communication, we use a millimeter waves. Okay, so for visible communication, still lower length of the waves we use, like that. So in the case of wide medium, based on your data rates and bandwidths that you are expecting for your application, you should select the kind of cable. So for example, for minimum bandwidths, so like 10 Mbps data rates, coaxial cable is sufficient. It looks like your cable TV wire, where there is a innermost conductor and the outer layer, and there is a net kind of conducting material, right? Again, there is a shield on the top. So it's like that. And the twisted pair cables, again you have shielded and unshielded twisted pairs. So for example, if you see here, category 5. So category 5 is 100 base T. 100 refers to it supports 100 Mbps. Then base refers to baseband signal, and T refers to twisted pair cable. So that is how we represent the kind of cables. Okay. Yes. Optical fiber cables, it gives the highest speeds with highest data rates, but the installation cost is quite high compared to the other cables. Okay, here the point is with respect to network hardware aspects, the kind of medium that you are using for your application also one of the thing that you should be careful. Now let us summarize the design aspects, the network design aspects for with respect to hardware. So let us see here in this slide. You can see, first of all, you should look at your application, right? So where exactly you are deploying the network. So whether it is in the universities or hospitals or office automation, factory automation, and so on.
Hello.
So where you are going to deploy your network, that's the first thing you should mind. For that, what sort of topology suits, whether it is a star topology, ring, bus, a tree, right, or extended tree. So like that, which topology suits your application, that you should decide. Then what is the medium that you have to connect the devices, whether it is optical fiber cable, twisted pair cable, or coaxial cable. So again, it is baseband or broadband or carrier band. So which one accordingly you should decide the kind of medium. Okay, so I am talking with respect to wide LAN. So obviously the kind of cables you should mind. Then coming to MAC protocols, medium access protocols. So we use fixed slots for each device. Then also we can have a control token mechanism. And similarly, you have Ethernet, CSMA, CD, carrier sense multiple access with collision detection. So this is one protocol, MAC layer protocol, which we use in Ethernets. So that is wide LANs. Okay, so we'll explore more about these protocols in the later lectures when we talk about data link layer. So this medium access control is a sublayer of data link layer. Which is, see, all the students, please mute your mics. Please mute your mics. I'm getting some noise here. I'm getting noise. Please, mute your mics. Medium access control is a sublayer of data link layer, which is a layer 2 in the ISO-OSM model. We'll discuss little later in this lecture itself. Then the last one is the standardized bodies. Okay, so the kind of devices that you are using, it should be standardized. It should be certified with one of the regulatory bodies. I'm keeping a few of them like ISO and IEEE, EIA, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that you should mind being a network hardware designer. Similarly, for wireless LAN, so what changes that you can see here is wireless LAN usually we deploy in applications like airports, warehouses, retail stores, hospitals. Okay. And here, if you look at the topologies, it is not regular topology like what we have discussed, like ring, star, and so on and so forth. It is not possible to maintain such topologies for wireless LANs because the medium is a wireless channel, which is a radio channel. So there won't be any predefined topologies that you can expect for your network. So we can classify the topologies as ad hoc networks and infrastructure-based networks. Okay, so the ad hoc network is an example like your Bluetooth network. Okay, so where you have a few devices which are very close and without any pre-configuring the things straight away you can share the content. It's an example of ad hoc networks. So infrastructure based networks for wireless LANs is something like your IAN network in the campus. Okay, so in MIT campus you have IAN connection where you have a wireless channel between your laptop or mobile to the access point. The other end of the access point is wired. Okay, so that is infrastructure based wireless LAN, we can call it as. So these are the two possibilities when you are installing a wireless LAN. One is either complete ad hoc network, or it should be an infrastructure based network where the some portion of the network is wireless and the other part is a wired network. Then coming to the transmission medium is a wireless medium. So when you are using wireless medium, you should see what are the frequencies, whether it is RF frequencies or infrared frequencies you are using. That also you should consider. And standards like IEEE standard and ETSI, these are the regulatory bodies. Now coming to MAC protocols, you can see here it is CDMA, FDMA, and TDMA. Okay, so frequency division multiple axis, time division multiple axis, code division multiple axis, and then we go for a CSMA CA. Okay, so that is carrier sense multiple axis with collision avoidance. Okay, so this is the protocol which we use in wireless networks. Then the transmission schemes, the modulation schemes, whether it is pulse position modulation or this is on-off keying techniques, that is ASK, PSK, FSK. Okay, amplitude shift keying, frequency shift keying, and phase shift keying techniques. So what sort of modulation you are going to use? So that's a direct modulation techniques. Similarly, carrier modulation, whether it is a single carrier or multi subcarrier modulations. So where the main carrier is divided into multiple small flat fading channels. Okay, so similarly, spread spectrum communication, if you use whether it is a direct sequence or frequency hopping. Similarly, you also have time hopping spread spectrum. So this is an example, for example, CDMA technology that is based on the direct sequence spread spectrum. So here what happens, the signal energy is spreaded over a large bandwidth where for unauthorized person it looks like noise, okay, because it is spreaded, the signal amplitude is very less at a given frequency. So unauthorized people, they cannot retrieve the signal, but for the authorized people they have to have same spreaded sequence that you have used at the sender side, same sequence you have to use to despread the signal and retrieve the original content. So that is, for security purpose we go for spread spectrum based communication. So this is another aspect of network hardware, that is whether your network should be a client server model or peer-to-peer model. So usually in the client server model, the communication happens between the client and server is like a request and replace. Being a client, you have to request the server for the content, and the server accepts the request and it will process it and it gives a reply. So the reply is the content that you requested, okay. So the communication between client and server is based on request and replies. Remember, clients always make requests, but not server will not make any request to any client. So only clients are going to make a request and server is going to reply back. The server is the central entity here. It is a centralized computing facility where the network resources are under the control of the server. Okay. So when you want to use the resources of the network, you should get permission from the server. So that is a centralized network. Client server network is a centralized network. So where the all the resources and the database is maintained at the server. Being a client, you can access the server to get the data that is available with server. On the other hand, you have peer-to-peer model where there is no server as such. Instead, every node has equal rights to access the resources of the network, and it is a distributed network. So there is no central body that give permissions or to monitor the network as such. So instead, all the nodes have equal authorities in participating in the network. So that is called peer-to-peer network. So in the peer-to-peer network, the challenge is that there is no security provision that you can, okay, because everyone has access. Whereas in client and server mechanism, you have client will take care of all the things. Okay. Yeah, let us look at a few models, the applications of peer-to-peer architecture. Gnutella is one of the peer-to-peer software, public software which is available. So here you can see there is no centralized server as such. So if you want to know some information in the network, then what you do, you just flood the request. Okay, so flood the request to your neighbors, and they also continue the process. They will also spread it somewhere if there is any hit. Okay, so the expected content which is available with some system, then it gives a reply. Okay, so through the reverse path how the query is traversed. So you can see here in this example, so this is the fellow, this is the user who want some content. So what he did was he has sent the request, okay, of that content, and it went to all his neighbors. So after that, those users also will forward the query. If they do not, if that particular system doesn't have the content, then the query request will be forwarded to his neighbors, and this forwarding procedure continues till you get the content that you are requesting it. So here this system has the requested content. So what he will do, he will reply back through the path how the query is traversed. So like that, so being a user, you can get the content which is available with any of the nodes in the network. Okay, so it is called a flooding mechanism. So where if you will get a query, so if you do not have answer for that query, what you should do, you should forward that query to all your neighbors except from whom you have received. Okay, so for that guy you should not send back the query. Instead, to other neighbors you can forward the query. So that is this is a peer-to-peer model. Here there is no centralized server that you can. Any doubts on this structure?
Sir, one doubt, sir. In the peer-to-peer architecture, it's the hardware architecture we are talking about, or it's like the protocol or the way the computers are connected?
The computers as a whole.
So, sir, one particular node is connected to, let's say, only 3 computers. Oh, okay, sir.
See, I am connected to, let's say, 3 computers. So those people also will be connected to somebody. So like that, let's say 50 people are there in the network. So what I will do, I want some content. So I will forward it to my neighbors. So they will, look into their database whether the response is there or not for the requested query. So if it is there, he will reply back. Otherwise, he will forward the query. So this process continues till where the content is available. So that node is going to give the reply.
Okay, sir.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is another P2P architecture called Kaja. So here it is a hierarchical model where you have normal nodes called ordinary nodes, and multiple such ordinary nodes are grouped, and there is a group leader. So there is a possibility that these group leaders also will be connected. Okay, so this is a two-level hierarchical model. So what we do is, being a ordinary node, I'll try to get the content within my group. So group leader will take care of. Okay, so he will ask all the remaining peers whether the requested query, the response which is available or not. If not, then the group leader will forward it to other groups. So, and that groups will check for the content. If there is, then they will reply. Otherwise, they will forward it further to other group leaders. Okay. So again, here there is no central server that you can have. BitTorrent is another example of P2P networks where there is no actual server. So here what happens is, most of the time you have less bandwidth to access the files that are present in the main server. So instead what we do is, so we'll try to get the entire file as piecewise. Okay, so and we can club together, so that pieces will be available with different systems in the network. So let me go to, yeah, so you can see here, so I am the one who is trying to download. Okay, so movie, for example, I am downloading a movie using BitTorrent. So all that movie is divided into pieces, and each fragment here, the fragments are available with different systems. You can see here, so fragment 7 is coming from here, and fragment 9 is coming from here to this, and fragment 10. So what I do is, here after collecting all the fragments, I don't keep quiet. Instead, I will also forward these fragments to my neighbors who do not have that. Okay, so it is a mutual help. So I try to download a movie. So the movie is not a single file, it is in terms of fragments that is available. Each fragment is available with a different nodes in the network. So every node will give that fragment which is available with them, and I'll collect all such fragments. Finally, I complete my download. At the same time, I will also share the fragments which I receive with the nodes who do not have that fragments. So that's how this BitTorrent works. The next one is a Skype application. So it is also a P2P architecture. So hope you know you use usually Skype, right? So let us look at its architecture. So where you have clients, so called Skype clients, SCs in this figure. Okay, so this is a small circle. This is a Skype client, and this big circle is called a super node, which has a better computing facilities. Then you also have a login server where all the users credentials will be maintained here as a database. Then you have a gateway servers called Skype in and Skype out. So these are the two bridges between your Skype network and the PSTN network, so which is a backbone network. Okay, so being a Skype client, if you want to communicate, what you should do, first you have to forward the request to supernode, and supernode will forward to other supernodes. Finally you should reach, the request should reach the login server where your credentials are verified. So once it is verified, then you can establish the call with the other users in the network. So you can see here, so being a Skype client, I should make a request, right? So that login credentials, username and password. So that will be sent to login server through multiple super nodes. So the login server will give reply. So once your credentials are verified, then you can start communicating with the other nodes in the network. So you will you have to have a TCP connection to establish the link. So once the link is established, then you use UDP to transfer your content. So this is how the Skype call works. Okay.
So can you explain this part
Excuse me,
again?
sir.
Yeah.
So how different is the Skype peer-to-peer network compared to a server? Because essentially, in the end, what's happening is that some data or request is going to a centralized server of some form. In this case, like in this case, it's going to the login server. So how is this any different from a client server model, or is this like a hybrid model that's present being?
Yeah. So good question. Here the login server that we are using is to verify your credentials, but not to make a copy of the content that you are transmitting. So whereas in a conventional client server mechanism, all your data will be copied onto the server. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. So this is essentially a type of a hybrid network, right?
Yes, you can take in that way, because you are confused that this login server is present, so it should become like a client server model. But here the idea for this login server is it just maintain your username passwords, not more than that. Okay, it is not going to maintain the content that you are transferring from one node to another. So if that all that things are maintained, then it will become a full-fledged client server model. But we are not doing that.
Got
Once
it, sir.
the credentials are verified, so then you are, see here, Skype client 1 is connected to client 2. So then whatever you are transferring, so that is a straightforward. So there is no transmission that's happening through the server. Whereas in full-fledged client and server model, if you being a client, if you want to communicate with other client, definitely you should go through the server. So you should send it to server, and server will send. It's something like your Gmail. So straight away you cannot do that. So all your mail should go to Gmail server, and it comes back to your friend. So that is a full-fledged client server mechanism.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions on this P2P models? Okay, let me forward. Yeah. Now the other one is client server architecture, where the server has a control over all the network resources, and it controls the access of the clients to the network as well as database. Okay, so you can see here, this is a server which maintains the database, and all the clients should access the database through the server only. And if they want to communicate among themselves, so they should contact through the server. Direct connection is not possible. However, client server model is quite secured one. Being a client, you need not worry much. So there will be sufficient resources, and precautions will be taken at the server end. So this is an example client of a client server model, where it is your ATM network. ATM in the sense, it's a bank ATMs I am talking about. Okay, so ATM, the elaboration of this is, one is automatic teller mission, that is what we use the bank ATMs. So we also discuss asynchronous transfer mode, that is a one network model which we are going to discuss. But here in this example, it is a normal bank ATM. Okay, you can see here checking balances, money transfer requests, all that stuff. Okay, so in this client server architecture of the bank ATMs, how it works? So there are two levels of servers that you have. So one is a middle tier servers, where you can check your balances and money transfer requests, all that stuff. And there is also called backend server. Okay, so if you want bank statement of 4 years back. Okay, so you want some transaction details that you have performed 4 years back. So it won't be available with this middle tier servers. Instead, you should make a request to backend servers. Okay, so the kind of users data, the client data, is maintained at different levels in the bank ATMs. So that network. Okay, so bank ATM network maintains need not be a single server. Okay, so there can be a multiple at different levels. That is possible. So most of the time the servers will be no, there will be backup servers always. So to make sure that the network functions 24/7. Yeah, let's come to wide area network. So this is the structure of wide area network, where you can see the different LANs. So these square boxes which are connected with wires, this is one LAN, this is another LAN, like that. So multiple LANs are present. Each LAN consists of multiple hosts. Host is nothing but your computers you can take. So where the users are going to generate the data, and they are going to transmit to other users. Okay, so that we call it as host, HOST, host. So that is a user equipment. Then you have this gray colored shaded region, where the routers are sitting. Okay, so the routers are sitting. So the job of the router is that they get something at the input line, and they decide which is the best output path to forward that content. So that's the job of the router. So router doesn't generate the data. Instead, it is just a forwarding device. That's all. Okay, so I have also explained its functions in the last class. So it's a layer 3 device. It's a network layer device, the router is. Okay, but hosts are the one who generates the data. So that is usually the users. Yes.
Sir, what type of is it the social networking sites? Like, is it P2P or client server, like Facebook or Instagram or any sort of social
Which
networking
one?
site? So, social networking sites.
Those are applications. Okay, so here I am talking about the whole network, present in the globe. So which is wide area network. Okay, so which is a wide area network. For example, you take the network which is present in our country. So it comes as a wide area network, where multiple local area networks are connected through the internet. So this is called communication subnet. This is called communication subnet. Okay, so where the routers are present, the job of the router is just to move the content from one device to another. For example, being a user in the Mahe network, I want to send some email to my friend who is maybe in the other state or other country. So how the things works here? So I'll transmit my mail and it goes to Mahe server, and from Mahe server it goes to other routers. Okay, so that it reaches, it goes in a hierarchical fashion, and finally it reaches the other end. So the whole network I am talking about, it is not just one application. So you can see here the hosts are owned by the customers, whereas the communication subnet, this one where these routers are present, that is owned and operated by the service providers, internet service providers. They have their own networks. Is there any doubt on this? It's a very, very important concept. Here you should understand what do you mean by host, what do you mean by subnet. Some subnet, the actual thing is a communication subnetwork. Okay, so communication subnetwork, in short form we call it as subnet. So this subnet consists of only the routers which are connected through wires. Okay, so it can be optical fiber cables or copper cables, or even wireless routers also present. So which acts as a switching elements that forwards the content that comes through input line, and it will execute the routing algorithm to decide which is the best output path, and accordingly it will forward. So finally it reaches the other side of the network.
So one doubt, sir, here.
Yeah.
Sir, like for example, my ISP is BSNL.
Okay.
Then my whole of the data will be transferred to the BSNL exchange point, right?
Yeah.
And he will be then forwarding the data to the other routers in his network, in his own network, which he owns.
Yeah, again it depends on to whom you are sending. See, you are sending something to your friend who is on Airtel network. See, if your friend is also in the same BSNL, no issues at all. So it goes to the nearby base station controller, and from BSC it goes to mobile switching center, and mobile switching center will forward your content to your friend if he is in the same network. If your friend belongs to some other network like Jio or Airtel, then accordingly it will be forwarded. So MSC will take care of mobile switching center, which is heart of your cellular system, will take care of in forwarding the content. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. So the Airtel, BSNL, their whole of the networks of routers together form the subnet.
No, they have their own networks. But if the receiver belongs to the other network, then the home network MSC will move the content to the foreign MSC. Okay, so foreign MSC is the MSC belongs to the other network, and that MSC will take care of to deliver it.
Okay, sir. So, sir, the routers owned by the BSNL only will form one subnet, and the routers owned by the Airtel will form one subnet.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Each service provider, they have their own network. It is not that all ISPs are having a collaborative network. It is not like that.
Okay, sir.
Yes. So then how exactly the content moves through the subnet? So let us see, this is the host who is sending the data. So the data that you are transferring is made into small portions called packets. So each packet usually will have source address and receiver's address. Okay, so these small packets will be injected into the communication subnet, and the routers will decide the path. Here, so the packets first comes to the router A. So router A will execute the routing algorithm and decides which path is the best. So there is two alternates, so whether it can select B or C. So in this example, it has selected C because maybe this is the best path. Okay, so when you are talking about network layer, you will come to know on what basis you say that this is the best path. Okay, so that we will see. So now here you can see all the packets are following the same path in the communication subnet. So this happens usually in the circuit switching. Okay, so but there is other possibility that the packets need not to follow the same path. Instead, they can follow different paths. So that is called datagrams. Okay, so virtual datagrams, which is a part of packet switching. So we'll come to that. It's a function of physical layer. So when we talk about physical layer, we'll come to know the kinds of switching. So that is circuit switching, message switching, and packet switching. In packet switching, again you have virtual circuit and datagram switching. So we'll see how each switching technique works. So here the point is the user data will be made into a smaller packets, and these packets will come to routers through their input lines, and the router will execute the routing algorithm to decide which is the best output path, and accordingly it will forward the packet, and that packets again comes to input line of the other router, and this router will repeat the story. Okay, so everywhere the packet first it should sit in the input queue of the each router, and before it gets processed and it will be forwarded. So that's why it's called a store and forward mechanism. So the packets will sit in the input buffer before it gets processed, because the routers will be usually engaged with other packets also. So here I am showing one flow, but if there are multiple users and they are injecting the packets to the same router, so then this router has to handle the traffic that comes from multiple users. So in that case, so each user's data should first sit in a queue. So then this router will take one packet of user one and it will process it. Then it takes the one packet of user two, process it, like that it goes. So here the packets in the subnet can take a same path, or it can also take a different path, even though the traffic is same. Okay, it belongs to a single user, but still the packets can take a different path. So packet 1 will take ACE, packet 2 can take ABDE. That is possible. Okay, now coming to wireless networks. So here a Bluetooth network, then wireless LANs and wireless WANs. Okay, so Bluetooth network need not to explain much about it. It's a example of personal area network. So where the communication range is very minimal, like it is a meters. It is in terms of meters. Coming to wireless LANs, so it's a kind of ION network in the campus where you can see. So there is a multiple laptops or computers that you have, even mobile devices. So you can have a wireless access till access point. So which is usually we have installed multiple access points. Even in the academic blocks, you can see in the corridors, you can see geo access points, and similarly in the hostels also. The other end of this access point is a wide network. So this is called wireless LAN. So similarly, wireless WAN also you can have. Okay, but remember the backbone is wide always. The backbone network is wide network. So this internet is a wide network. So where the wireless routers. So this router can have a wireless link. This red indicates, this red lines indicates it's a wireless channel. So the router, the other end of the router can also be wireless. So that is a wireless wide area networks. Coming to home networks. So in the home networks, each appliance of the home can be a part of the network. So like your baby cam, microwave, refrigerator, all appliances whatever you use in home can be connected to the network, and it can be monitored or controlled remotely. So that is the main idea behind this home network appliances. So I can switch on my TV, switch off my TV, and so on and so forth. So this is a IoT. It's a part of IoT. You might have a certain idea behind it, right? So now coming to the software aspects of network designing. So we have to look at these aspects. The first one is a protocol hierarchies, design issues of the for the different layers of the protocol stack. Then whether you are looking for connection oriented services or connectionless services, what are the service primitives, and what is the relation between services and protocols. So these are the different aspects that we are going to discuss now one by one under network software design aspects. Okay, the first one is a protocol hierarchy. So the entire communication network software, the designing is represented in terms of layers. Okay, so the whole design will be divided into layers, and each layer performs certain functions. Each layer performs certain functions, and that information will be conveyed to its immediate higher layer. So through an interface, you can see here there is an arrow mark here that indicates an interface. So interface is like some sort of link between two successive layers. And this is one mission. This is host one. So the same thing, the same set of layers will be present in the other mission, which is a part of the network. So in the communication networks, what you're supposed to understand is all the devices, whoever is participating in the network should follow the same sort of protocol stack. So here I am following 5 layers. So similarly, all the system, all the devices which are in this network should also have the same protocol stack in order to communicate with each other. So here you can see some dashed line between the corresponding layers. Okay, so that is called virtual links. These are the virtual links, and this I call it as entities, peer entities. Okay, so peer entity. So the term entity represents, so the entity can be a particular layer, or entity can be a particular computer. Okay, so the whole computer or the whole device, I can call it as an entity, or I can call a particular layer of the protocol stack is one entity. So if I take a layer 1 as an entity, then the term protocol, so it gives the kind of procedures that you have to follow in order to communicate with peer entities. Okay, so protocol tells you set of rules and regulations that you have to follow in order to communicate with peer entity. So what do you mean by peer entity? So it is layer 1 of the other device. Okay, so if layer 1 of your device is considered as an entity, then in order to communicate with a peer entity, you have to have a protocol. Okay, so there is something called protocol. So it's a very important term. So the definition of protocol, it is a set of rules that you need to follow in order to communicate with peer entity. So if I consider the entire host as one entity, then protocol tells you what are the rules and regulations that you need to follow as a host in order to communicate with the other host in the network. So the other host is a peer entity. And the interface is the kind of services that are available with the lower layer, a particular layer, and that services will be offered to its immediate higher layer as a service. Okay, you try to understand. Slowly I am introducing a few terms called protocol, interface, and service. Okay, so what I am trying to say here is the entire network software design is divided into multiple tasks and each task will be executed by a particular layer. Okay, so each layer defines certain functions. It is implemented with certain functions, and those details will be informed to the its immediate layer as services, and that services will be informed through an interface. So for simple understanding, I'll tell you an example that when you go for a restaurant, so what you do, so first you look at the menu card, right? What it says what are the items that are available in the sorry, in the restaurant, right? So you will come to know. So that is a kind of interface. Menu card is an interface here. So it gives an idea about what are the different items that restaurant can offer. Similarly, being a layer n, so I will come to know what are the services that a layer n minus 1 can offer to me. So how I can come to know is through interface. Okay, so that's the definition for understanding the interface, and the kind of services that are available at a particular layer will be, the kind of functions that are implemented at a particular layer will be given as services, will be offered as services to it's a higher layer. Okay, so in the menu card you can see the different items, right? So you will come to know what are the different items that are present. So those are called services. And you should also mind that being a customer, do you really mind about how each item, what are the ingredients, and what is the way of preparing, what is the procedure, all that? Being a customer, no. So we don't really dig those details. Same way here also, layer 2, for example, layer 2 is assigned with certain functions, and those functions are implemented, and that functions, the implementations will be offered as services to layer 3. So now being layer 3, I just take its services, not the details of that, how they are implemented, what is the algorithm that they have used, all that is none of my business being a layer 3. So what I'll take from layer 2 is what are the services that layer 2 can offer to me. So for example, security is offered. So layer 2 is implemented with, let's say, some security algorithm. So you take a security service, okay? So you really don't mind about what is the technique that they have used and how they have implemented it. All that is not required for you. Hope you understand this concept. It's called a layered architecture. Okay, so it's a layered architecture. The network software designs usually, decided in the form of layers. So now, why we should go with this layered architecture? To make the things simple. So that's the final conclusion of this. So to make the design process easy by breaking unmanageable tasks into several smaller and manageable tasks. That's the first idea behind this layered architecture. And modularity and clear interfaces so as to provide the compatibility between different providers and components. Okay, so this is important. So there should be a compatibility between different products of different manufacturers. So this layered structure helps you for that, and ensure independence of layers so that implementation of each layer can be changed or modified without affecting other layers. So see, whenever you are doing something at layer 2, for example, here you are using security implementations, you are using a particular algorithm K. Okay, so I'm taking some name of the algorithm. You are using a K algorithm to implement security. So when there is a advancement in the technology, so for example, some other algorithm is better. Okay, so as a part of innovations, so some other algorithm called X is doing well compared to the existing algorithm K. Then you have to replace K algorithm with X. So that should not affect the rest of the design. Okay, so that should not affect the rest of the network design. So that is important. So that is called layers independence. So if you do some changes or modifications to a particular layer, that should not affect other layers. Then each layer should be analyzed and tested independently of all other layers. So troubleshooting one layer should not affect other layers. So that's also important. So it is something like to understand it in a simple way in a company when the project is offered. Okay, so the when a company get a particular project to implement it, what they do, so they try to identify what are the major functions of that project. Okay, then that each function will be assigned to one particular team. So and that team will execute that functions and it will give the outcomes. Like that, all these multiple teams will take the multiple functions and they perform it. Finally, they combine it. So why should we divide like this? To make the thing simple. So instead of all employees work all together on the project at a time, instead you divide the project among multiple teams and ask them to implement that, and finally you combine it. So it's as simple as that. Why we are going for layered architecture. Okay, now let us define the terms called protocols, services and interfaces. So protocol, the name itself, it says that set of rules and regulations to be followed. So in a general way, so when you are talking with somebody, what do you say? You say hi, right? So you say hi, and nowadays we don't give shake hand. So otherwise, we used to give shake and hi, hello, how are you, like that. This is how we greet the people. So this is a general protocol that we use. Same way in computer networks or communication networks, when you want to communicate with others, first what you should do, you should make a connection request. So when the other party is willing to accept your request, they will give a reply. So when you get a reply back, then you are allowed to transmit your data. Okay, so this is how you have to communicate with the other device. So this is called a protocol. So what you are doing here, you are following certain rules and regulations to communicate with other nodes in the network. Okay, you can see here I am making a TCP request. So to the server, if server is willing to accept my request, it will give a reply, right? So like for example, a Gmail server. So when I want to check my mails, what I do, first I'll type www.gmail.com. So what I am trying to do there, so I am trying to connect to the Gmail server. So when the server accepts the request, it will give reply. So what I'll get immediately, I'll get a page where I need to enter my username. So once I type that username, say enter, then I'll be asked to give my password. So once I give that, then I'll my credentials will be verified at the server and it will give inbox. So this is how I supposed to follow in order to access the Gmail server. So this is called call establishment. Okay, so I have established a connection with the Gmail server. Similarly, when I try to after reading all my mails, what I'll do, I'll click on logout. So when I say logout, what happens? The connection termination request. Being a client, I am trying to terminate my connection. So that request will go. So when I click on logout, so the connection termination request from client to server will be going, and the server will accept that. Then it will give a reply. So what you will get? You are successfully logged out. So that is what the reply that you get from the server. So this is a connection termination. So you can see connection establishment phase and data transfer phase. That is when I read my mails, and when I can also send mails to other people, all that stuff. So that is a data transfer phase. and when I say log out, it's a connection termination phase. So when you use a TCP protocol, okay, TCP protocol, so which is a connection oriented protocol, you have to make connection establishment, data transfer, and connection termination. That is called a three-way handshaking. So that is about the protocol. So protocol, it says a set of rules that a particular layer to follow in order to communicate with a peer entity. That's important. Okay, so entity can be a layer or entity can be the entire host itself. Now coming to service, a service is a set of actions that a particular layer offers to its immediate higher layer. As I told you, so what are the services that I can offer to my higher layer? So security or multiplexing, okay, so segmentations, like that. So how I can inform that what are the services that I can offer to my higher layer? I can inform through an interface. I hope I have given the definitions of these three terms: protocol, service, interface. So through interface, a particular layer can inform what are the services that it can offer to its higher layer. Any doubts on these three terminology? So this is the definitions and details of that. So, and this is an example to have a better understanding of these three terms. You can see here there are two philosophers who want to exchange their opinion. So unfortunately, they use a different languages. Okay, they use different languages. However, they want to exchange their opinions. So how it can be done? So here, at location A, the guy who is talking, English, there is intermediate person called translator. So who will convert English into Dutch, and this Dutch content is forwarded through a face mail. Then at the receiving end, the other side, this face mail content, which is Dutch, will be given to this translator, and the translator will convert into Japanese. Hopefully it's Japanese language. This philosopher is using a Japanese language. So no matter which language they are using, but still you can able to connect them properly. So how it is possible? It is possible because here you can see layer 2. Okay, so layer 2. So what's happening here? The people who are the translators who are present at layer 2 are using a common language called Dutch. Okay, so these two are peer entities. These two are peer entities. So they should use same set of rules and regulations, which is a Dutch language. That is a protocol. So what I can say is this layer 2, they are using same set of protocols. Then only they can communicate. Similarly, at layer 1, you are using the same sort of communication, which is a face mail. Okay, so whatever the sender side you are using, same thing you have to follow at the receiving end. Then only there is a possibility of communication. So same set of protocols to be followed by all the nodes in the network. So if you use face mail here, there you use telephone to receive a call, then there is no compatibility. So if you are using face mail, definitely you should use face mail here to receive the content. So if you are using Dutch language here, you should use a Dutch language, same Dutch language here also. So the peer entities should follow the same set of protocols. But being a user, I need not to do that. Being a user, so I don't know English, I can do my local language, but still somehow you have to allow that language to be converted into mission independent, right? So we use many languages, but finally what happens, whether whatever you are typing, whether directly that content will be transferred as it is? No. All your content usually converted into mission dependent into mission independent form, like ASCII format. Right? You might have known about this ASCII format. So that is a mission independent form. Okay, so that is about understanding of layers, protocols, services, and interfaces. Okay. Yeah. So when you are doing that, when you are moving the content from higher layers to the lower layers, so at each layer there will be some processing that happens, and the details of that processing will be attached as a header. So for instance, I am sending some English language. Okay, so some chat message I am sending it from my laptop. So that is my user data. So when it goes to application layer, it will convert into ASCII format. So that ASCII information, okay, so that conversions will be mentioned here. What is the format that I have used to convert the content from mission dependent to mission independent? So I have used ASCII format. That information I have to keep here. So then the entire thing, like a header as well as the message, will be treated as raw data for the next lower layer. So what it is going to do, it is going to do some process at layer 3, and it adds that details. What are the kind of process that they have done? So like for example, I have used modulation and multiplexing. Okay, so what sort of modulation you have used? What is the kind of multiplexing you have used? So those details you have to mention. So like that. So in one particular layer in our ISO model, there is a layer called data link layer. So apart from header, it also adds a trailer. Okay, so there is an end for that. We'll come to that, which we call it a CRC value cyclic redundancy check. Okay, only that particular layer will add a trailer along with the header. Otherwise, all the rest of the layers will add only headers. Okay. So now, similarly, it goes when the content moving from higher layers to lower layers, at each layer, there will be some processing that happens, and the details of that processing will be appended as a headers. Okay, so this process is called encapsulation. This process is called encapsulation. And at the receiving end, the reverse procedures that happens. So for example, if we have performed here a particular modulation, then the corresponding demodulation you should do at the receiving end. And you have to remove that corresponding headers. Okay, so at the layer 2, you have to remove H2 and T2. Okay, and the remaining you deliver it to higher layer. So layer 3, what it is going to do, it will do the reverse procedures. So for example, here you have done encryption, then the peer entity, so that is a layer 3 at the receiving side, should do decryption. Okay, so using the same algorithm. So then H3 will be removed and the remaining content will be given to higher layer. So here, whatever you have done here, the reverse procedures will be performed here, and finally the message will be delivered to the user. So user is sitting on top of all these layers. So your friend can see whatever you have typed the English chat, so he can able to see, and he also can give a reply. So that is how the data that moves from user of one mission to the user on the other mission. So the data, the actual data flows like through these solid arrows. Okay, so this is how the data flows. So at user 1 from top to bottom and through the physical medium, then at this receiving end, the data flows from bottom to top. Okay, this is the actual link. But what is the virtual transmission, virtual links? So as I told you, the layer 5. So this layer 5 at mission 1 and the layer 5 at mission 2, they feel that they have direct communication, because whatever I type, immediately I'll get a reply in English from my friend, right? So what I feel that I'm directly connected to my friend. I type English and immediately I'll get a reply from my friend. So I feel that I'm directly connected to my friend. So that is what I am representing here. That is layer 5 of sender host is direct kind of feeling. It's a virtual connection. It is okay. So that's why it is mentioned with dotted arrows. It's a dotted link. So it's a virtual connection. It is not a real connection. Real connection is like this, but the virtual connection is present because these peer entities, they feel that they are directly connected. Okay, so there's a difference between this virtual links and the actual links. So now coming to the design issues, when you are designing these layers, what are the different issues? The first one is addressing. So how we are going to address individual nodes in the network? So what is the format that you use, right? So how exactly you are going to address your computer or mobile? Can someone answer? So in the network, how your device is addressed?
Sir, we can use the media access code MAC.
Yeah, MAC address or physical address is one of the mechanisms that you can use to differentiate the device. Don't you use IP address? So IP address is another way. So like that, we also have application specific address. Okay, so logical address or IP address or address or MAC address. Okay, so did you come across something called socket address?
So socket address is specific to the application on the node.
No. So socket address is a combination of port address, IP address along with the port address. Okay. So you can see in your IP address something like 190.16.25.80, then followed by port address, which is a 10 or 80, something like that. Did you observe that? So if you use HTTP, you can see like I think of 80. 80 is the port number. Did you see that?
Yes,
If not,
sir.
you check it. Okay, so there is something called port addresses also. So the addressing function is defined at different layers. Okay, so at MAC layer we use a MAC address. At network layer we use IP address. At transport layer we use a port address, and at application layer we use application specific addresses. We'll go to that in detail, but here the idea is when you are talking about addressing issue, you should mind that how you are going to uniquely identify each node in the network. The second one is rules for data transfer, whether you are using a half duplex communication or full duplex communication. Hope you know the definitions of this. Half duplex communication is A can talk to B, also B can talk to A, but not simultaneously. Whereas in full duplex, A to B and B to A data can be transferred simultaneously. Can you give some examples if you know for half duplex?
Walkie-talkie, sir.
Very good. Walkie-talkie is the best example for half duplex communication, right? So when you are talking, you say over so that the other guy will start. What about full duplex communication?
Mobile calls.
Exactly. So your mobile conversations are examples of full duplex communication. So most of the time we go on talking no matter what other party is telling, especially when we fight with others. No, so this happens. Okay. So that is about whether you are going for full duplex data transfers or half duplex. Next is the logical channels and their priorities. So logical channels are is divided, right? So control channels and data channels. So control channels are used to transfer the content like a connection establishment, connection terminations. Okay. So and if there is any connection failures, so you use control channels to handle all the content related to this. Whereas the data channels are used to transfer the user's data. Okay, so which is the highest priority? So usually control channels will have a highest priority. Control data will have a highest priority because they have to handle a connection establishment and termination as well as connection failure situations also. Okay, so the next one is error control. So error control means when you are transmitting the data, if there is any errors in the medium, so when the data is moving from sender to receiving nodes, there are chances that your data will be corrupted. So the binary ones and zeros gets flipped to the other value. So how we are going to address these things at the receiver? Are you able to detect this kind of errors? If so, are you able to correct them? Okay, so this aspect, error control techniques talks about this. How you are going to handle the errors at the receiver, whether you can able to detect them and correct them, or to what extent you can do that. So we'll discuss few such techniques. How you are going to handle the data that you miss. Okay. So as I told you, the user's data will be divided into smaller packets, right? So that smaller packets will be transmitted through the communication subnet, which we have seen in the figure, and it will be delivered on the other side of the communication subnet. So there are chances that some of the packets will be missed in the communication subnet. So that means at some of the routers, your packets can be missed. Okay, we will discuss what are the different reasons for that, but assume that the packets are missed at the routers. Okay, so I am sending packet 1 to packet 10. So packet 6 and 5 are lost in the communication subnet, and the rest will be arrived at the receiver. Then what you will do with this? Okay, so how we are going to handle that missed packets? Can someone guess? See, I have transmitted from packet 1 to packet 10. So out of which packet 5 and 6 are dropped with very different reasons that we will see later. But assume that 5 and 6 are dropped, the rest are arrived. So now how you are going to handle this data?
Sir, can the host request the dropped packets again, send it again basically?
So you mean to say you are asking for retransmitting 5 and 6?
Yes, sir.
Very good idea. Very good idea. What about 7, 8, 9, 10?
Since you already have a copy at the receiver side, there's not a requirement.
That's good. That's good. But who will handle that? Will the receiver will accept that 7, 8, 9, 10 without getting 5 and 6?
No, sir. We'll have to wait for everything to arrive. So it will have to buffer it.
That is what my question is. The receiver is shows willingness to buffer the things.
And that is the design issue, sir. It's
Yes,
up to us
exactly,
to decide.
exactly. So what you are going to do? So whether you will ask for node 5 onward, I mean packet 5 onwards. See, A is sending packet 1 to 10 till packet 4 it's fine, 5 and 6 are missed. So 7, 8, 9, 10 came. So node B can ask, hey, I am not going to mind about the further transmissions because I am expecting 5, but packet 5 I did not get. So you better you transmit the packets from 5 onwards, no matter 7, 8, 9 are received properly or not. So that's one way. It may not be a clever idea, but still there is a algorithm called go back N algorithm. Okay, so go back N ARQ. But the a clever idea that what we have proposed is you just buffer the things whichever you have received properly, no matter whether they are out of sequence, and you ask only for the packets which are received with errors or which are not received, so which are dropped in the subnet. So you ask for retransmissions of only those things. So that is called a selective repeat ARQ. So how exactly you are going to deal with all these situations? Okay, so that is a loss of sequencing. Next one is a flow control issue. So how we are going to address sender and receiver where sender is so fast and the receiver is not at that level. So for example, I am teaching at a fast level, but your grasping is not to that level, then there is a mismatch. So there is a data loss. So how exactly you are going to synchronize these two guys, a fast sender and slow receiver? Sender is sending data fast, but the receiver, unfortunately, he is not capable of handling receiving the data at that rates. So then how you are going to coordinate these two? So that is called a flow control issues. Then assembling and disassembling that the data which you get from higher layers. So if it is a large in size, okay, so then straight away if you transmit, it is not feasible to handle by the subnet. So what you should do is you should divide that large data into a smaller portions. So then you send each one at a time. But here the thing is, what should be the size of each portion that you are going to make for that large data? Okay, so it should not be too small because it leads to more number of packets, right? So large content, if you make it into a smaller packets, then the number of packets will be too high. So if you make a larger packet, then there may be issues in handling that packets at the subnet. So what should be the optimum size, or how you decide the size of the packet? Okay, so and at the receiver also, as I told you, the packets will travel in the communication subnet in their own way, need not to follow the same path always. So if they follow the same path, then obviously you can expect the order of data at the receiver. So order is guaranteed. But when the packets take some independent paths in the communication subnet, so the packet 2 may arrive first than packet 1. That is possible because packet 2 may take shortest path in the subnet, whereas packet 1 has taken quite a longer path. Then packet 2 will arrive first. So then how you handle this out of order content? So that is assemble and disassemble. Similarly, multiplexing and demultiplexing is how you are going to multiplex the data belongs to of different users. Okay, so and how you are going to deliver the data at the receiving end. So usually, if I take my laptop, so I may use a YouTube and I use Manipal.edu, I use a Gmail server, all simultaneously, multiple applications. Okay, so when I execute these applications, all the content finally where it will go through a same network interface card, right? So all the content, no matter which application you are using, but the content end of the day it goes through a same physical channel. But at the receiving end, how exactly you are going to demultiplex them, and you should give it, to the corresponding servers, right? So when I use manipal.edu, so I should not get something from YouTube. Same way, when I use youtube.com, so I should not get something from Gmail. Okay, so that demultiplexing also should be very proper. So how exactly you perform these things? So that is the issue with the multiplexing and demultiplexing. We'll address all of this in detail. Have any doubt, someone? Okay, the last aspect is the routing aspects. As I told you, it's a layer 3, which is a network layer. Routers, so the job of the routers is to forward the packet from input line to output line. So while deciding the output line, it will execute the routing algorithm, which gives the best path in the sense shortest path from the sender side to receiving end. So we'll discuss what are the routing algorithms and protocols in detail. You can raise any doubts if you have, otherwise we will move forward. Okay, next one is a connection oriented services and connection less services. So connection oriented services is before transmitting your data, sender has to establish a link with the receiver. So after establishing the link, then you can transfer the data. After transferring of the data, you have to terminate the connection. So connection establishment, data transfer, connection release. So these are the three phases of data movement between a sender and a receiver, the communication between sender and a receiver. So usually TCP protocol is a connection oriented protocol. When I say connection oriented services, it means that they use connection establishment, data transfer, and connection release. These three phases will be there. This is implied. So when you are doing this, okay, so the order of data is preserved. So like, once you establish the connection, then all your data will go through the same connection, right? So order of data is guaranteed here. So order of data in the sense, when I transmit, 10 packets, all 10 packets will reach in the same order. There are chances that some packets may be lost, but it doesn't happen that packet 2 will arrive first than packet 1. It won't happen because all the packet will go through the same connection. So order of data is guaranteed, and it is quite reliable because you are beforehand you are establishing the link. Before transferring your data, you are establishing the link, then you are transferring it. So it's quite reliable. Can you give some example of this kind of services, applications? So
the FTP protocol.
Yeah. Come again?
Sir, is the file transfer protocol connection oriented?
Yes, file transfer protocol is connection oriented. So I am expecting some application which is what do you call connection oriented based.
Sir, best example is video conferencing. What you are doing right now.
Video conferencing, not exactly. Because whatever I am sending, I am not sure whether you are receiving or not.
So messaging on the WhatsApp.
Messaging in the WhatsApp. Not exactly. No, are you establishing a call before you are sending
the normal
WhatsApp
phone
message?
call? The normal phone
Exactly. So it's a conventional phone call. Okay, the best example is a phone call. So you are establishing, call before you start talking, right? My bank transaction, I don't, I cannot transfer my, amount until unless I connect to the server. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the connection-oriented services, maybe they may take a little time to establish the link with the receiving party. However, once you establish the call, it gives a quite a reliable data transfers at the cost of delays, establishment delay, call establishment delays. Okay.
Excuse me,
So on the
sir.
other hand, we see connection-less services, which we call it as datagram services. Okay. Which we call it as datagram services. So here it's there is no need of connection establishment. There is no need of connection establishments. So whenever you have data, directly you can transfer it. You cannot give guarantee that it will be received, and also there won't be order of data that is guaranteed. So if you have something to transmit, straight away transmit without connecting to the receiving party, without making connection establishment. Can you give some applications of this kind?
FM broadcasting.
You mean to say bulk messages, right?
Yes, the broadcasting or FM.
That is what. See, we get some advertisement messages, right? So from some Airtel or something like More Market or Geo, something like you have offered this, you have offered that. So it is not that exclusively they are sending it to me. It's with one click they'll send it to multiple people and they don't mind whether it is received or not. Correct. So that is a kind of connectionless service. It's a unreliable service, but it doesn't bother about the call establishment and all. Okay, now the question is, when you go for connection oriented services and when you go for connectionless, is really you prefer connectionless service? If so, when? Connection oriented, as I told you, I use that service where the reliability is the highest priority. I can bear some delay, but I can't compromise for reliability of my data transfer. So like financial transactions. So I can wait till I connect to server. So after giving my username and password, I can wait some time to get connected with the server so that my transactions will be reliable. Okay, so for that I go for connection oriented. So whether is there any situation that I can also go for connectionless service?
So where reply is not expected.
Yeah, can you give some applications that we use?
So basically things like live streams.
Live streams, exactly. So for example, live cricket. So here the delay is not accepted, right? So but we can compromise for loss of some bits. See on the screen when there is some portion of the screen, a small corner, there is a glitch. Okay, so you can't see the image properly, but still you are okay because you want live scores. So you don't want a delay of a few seconds also, right? So in that case, you go for connectionless, where delay is not accepted, but loss of a few bits is accepted. Okay, so in that case, I can go for connectionless services. So usually this video calls. right? So WhatsApp calls, video calls, there, like you will be compromised. You will be compromised for, sorry, not WhatsApp call. So it is, what do you call, video conferencing only. So that is one to many without having, call establishment. So that's important. WhatsApp call I cannot tell you, because until unless you connect, you cannot transfer the video. But a connectionless service, you can broadcast it without expecting any acknowledgements, right? That is the thing. And which is a faster, obviously?
Connectionless.
Connectionless, because we don't spend time to establish the link. And the other aspect is quality of service. So it means that my data transfers, I expect some priority. So some sort of, VIP treatment I expect. So I see when I am sending my data, everybody what they expect, their data should not be lost in the communication subnet. So all the content without, corruptions, it should be reached at the receiving end. I expect that. At the same time, I don't want much time that it should take. Okay, so I want my data transfers with minimum time and maximum success. That is called throughput. Okay, so higher throughput, minimum delays. Okay, and I want shortest path. I want shortest path. So these are some QoS parameters. Okay, so end-to-end delay and throughput, cost, all these are quality of service parameters. So as a user, I expect these things. So when I expect this, obviously I should pay for something else. Okay, so we'll see to that. So what are the quality of service parameters and how we can achieve them, all that. So that is again is a part of software aspects of the network design. And these are certain examples of connection oriented and connectionless services. You can see here connection oriented services, for example, like file transfer, which is a sequence of pages. It is a reliable message stream. It is a connection oriented. When you are transferring a file, first you have to establish the connection, then you can transfer. Same way, remote login. So when you are using remote login, so this is also a connection oriented. You have to establish the link, then only you can transfer the data. And digitized voice. Okay, so digitized voice. So this is an example of your WhatsApp video calls or WhatsApp voice calls. So both. So that is you are transmitting the digital data, but even though it's a connection oriented, it's a unreliable connection. Am I correct? So you don't get the quality as what you get with your conventional telephone call. Agree? So that is a quite unreliable connection. So you can see, even though it's a connection oriented, so it's a quite unreliable one. Same way here, connectionless service, but I can make a reliable one to certain extent. So you can take this example like a registered mail. So what is this registered mail? So you are going to send a mail without establishing prior connection with your friend, but at the same time you can also expect the ACK from that. So something like a register post. So a normal post, there is no guarantee that it will be received, but a register post, there is a guarantee, right? So that reliability, you are increasing it because you have that acknowledgement with you. When you are making a register post, they will give some slip to you, right? So that this guy has posted so and so letter to so and so people. So tomorrow you can trace it out. So that's a acknowledgement based transmissions where you can expect some sort of reliability, even though it's a connectionless service. Okay. Hope you understood this difference. Okay. So it doesn't mean that connection oriented service always reliable. At the same time, connectionless services always unreliable. It's not like that. To a certain extent, we can also make them reliable with ACK system. Acknowledgement based communications, we can make the data transfers to certain extent, it's a reliable. So after transferring a few packets, I'll ask acknowledgement from the receiving end. Did you receive? If you say yes, then I'll continue further transmissions. Otherwise, I may have to retransmit, something like that I should do. Finally, the receiving party will receive all sort of packets. Okay, connectionless service with unreliable datagrams like bulk messages or junk mails that you get. Okay, and this is another one. It's a client-based client-server model where request and replace. So server will maintain the database, and being a client, you have to make the request, and he will give the replace. So, and let me look at this. Yes, let me take quickly 2 minutes, 2 more minutes, so that we can wind up this fundamentals. Next class we can start with the reference model straight away. So the next aspect is a service primitives. So a service primitive is a small operation that is performed. Okay, a small operation. What is that? You look at these examples. Listen. So listen is a service primitive. It's a small function. Okay, so with respect to your programming languages, it's a small function. Okay, when you execute this function, what will happen? It will perform some small task. Okay, so same way here, this listen primitive, when you execute this, it will perform something. What is that? It will wait for incoming connection. It will wait for incoming connection. So with respect to client server model, this listen primitive is executed at the server end. Okay, so when it is executed at the server end, the server is listening to the incoming connections from whom? From the clients. So server is listening to the clients. Okay, so this connect primitive, so when it is executed, what will happen? It establishes the connection with a waiting peer. So who is the waiting peer here? Server. So establish the connection with the server. Okay, so this connect primitive will be executed at the client end when you are making a request. Same way, when you are getting a reply, so it also executes at the server end also. Okay, remember one thing, that when you are establishing a connection, there are two things. So one is from client to server, there is forward connection, and server to client also there should be a connection. Okay, so client to server, in order to make a connection, connect primitive should be executed at the client. When you want to establish the connection between server to client, connect primitive should be executed at the server end. So this connect primitive will be executed on both the ends. So, and receive. So receive is block waiting for an incoming message. So usually the incoming messages is from whom? From the server to client. So receive message usually will be to the receiver, I mean a client. So the data that you get, a response that you get from the servers. Send, you send something. Okay, so send something, send some message. So it also can be on both the sides when you are sending the data to the server. So this primitive will be executed, and similarly during connection termination phase, disconnect primitive will be executed. So here the point is, these service primitives are small operations. They define small operations. When you execute that, that operation will be performed. So that's the meaning of that. So now let me quickly go to this. So here the client and server. So how the communication happens between these using service primitives. Okay, so if you look at the client, okay, so you have a client who is sitting on the user is sitting on the top, and they will talk to the operating system, right? So whatever you are doing, it is handled by the operating system of your host, right? So what is the operating system? So it's a firmware. So it's a bridge between your user programs and the communication hardware devices. So it's a firmware. So kernel is a heart of the operating system, and this is where your protocol stack is sitting, and this is your device drivers. So you can talk to this kernel and protocol stack and device drivers through system calls. So here somewhere here you use C or CPP program or embedded C programming to talk with this operating system. So if you are aware of kernel programming, you can come across this. So something called, we call it a socket programming. Okay. So where we use embedded C to talk to this, what do you call, semaphores, pipes, all that stuff. Okay. So that's a different thing. Maybe you have studied or you are going to study. I don't know. Maybe it's a part of embedded systems. Fine. So now here our focus is on how the service primitives helps you to communicate between client and server. So here you can see the step 1, connection request. So connection request is connect primitive. So this is a connect primitive is executed at the server client end. Okay. So it is executed at the client end. So server will receive that and he will give a reply, right? So this is ACK acknowledgement. So when he is giving a reply, so by receiving the ACK, client will will come to know that there is a connection that is established. Okay, I'm not going in detail about client to server establishment and server to client establishment. So together I am considering here. So if you go in detail, that is a different thing. Maybe in the transport layer we'll see that. Okay. So then after connection establishment, we will transfer the data. We will transfer the data. So client will ask for requesting the data, and server will give the reply. So after data transfer, use the disconnect primitive, to terminate the connection. You can see in the step 5, disconnect primitive is executed at the server client end, so that the connection from client to server is closed. Okay, so in order to close the connection from server to client, so you should perform disconnect primitive. Okay, at the server end. So disconnect primitive is executed on both the sides. So for example, I am downloading some YouTube video. Okay, so some movie. So what I will do, I will connect to YouTube server, and that download link I will take it and I will paste it somewhere, and that download is happening. So what I will do, from my client side, I can close the connection, right? So I can close that window. So this disconnect, this will be executed, but there is still something is coming from the server end, right? That downloading is still happening. So when that will be closed, when the downloading is completed, then that will be closed. So here the point is that when you close from client to server, it doesn't mean that there is a connection that is again closed from server to client. Need not be. Okay. So this is how you can use service primitives to communicate between client and server. So, and let me summarize whatever we have discussed, the terms, relay, protocol, services, and interface. So if you take these layers, layer K at mission 1 and layer K at mission 2. So these two are peer entities. These two are peer entities, and if they want to communicate among themselves, what they should do, they should follow the protocols. Okay, so that is set of rules and regulations that they have to follow in order to communicate. Okay, so same way, protocol also peer entities, I can define that as a host. So the entire host can be one entity, then another host in the network can be another entity. So entities means it is a peer level, peer entities at the same level. Fine. So now coming to the services. So layer 1, the function, some functions are defined for layer 1. So and those functions will be implemented. For example, security. Security is defined at layer K. So security function is implemented using some algorithm. Okay, some encryption and decryption algorithms. Security function is implemented at layer K. So it is going to tell its immediate higher layer, that is layer K plus 1, that I provide security. I provide security. So that is what layer K is going to inform K plus 1th layer. How it is going to inform? It is going to inform through the interface. It is going to inform the service that it provides, which is security, through the interface. So that is this double arrow mark. So this is the interface that tells you the kind of services that a particular layer offers to its immediate higher layer. Hope we have covered the terms protocols, services, and interface. Is there any doubt on this? So these fundamentals are very important in order to understand. Next class, we are going to talk about reference models. 3 reference models we are going to talk about. So which are very, very fundamentals to the entire course. So the entire course talks about only these reference models in detail. Okay, each layer of the reference model, for example, you take something like this. Yeah, here you can see the physical layer, data link layer, and network layer, transport, session, presentation, and application layers. So each layer we'll discuss in detail. So that is about the course. Okay, so what we are going to cover in this entire course is about this layer architecture. So you can see here there is a virtual connections between the peer entities. So, but what is the actual connection? The actual connection is something like this solid lines. This dotted lines indicates the virtual connections, and you can see between the successive layers, you can see the interfaces. Okay, so here what I want to say is whatever we have covered so far, try to recap it before attending the next class so that you can easily understand the reference models. Fine. Is there any doubt till this point? No? Somebody is feeling that I am going a little faster? Or this, this speed is fine?
Yes, sir, the speed is fine.
Very good, very good. Okay, then we'll maintain the same speed. And, are you able to follow Ayush Mittal? Are you able to follow? Ayush Mittal?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Revant Garg, are you following?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Chetan Agarwal?
Yes, sir.
Are you liking it?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Yuvraj Jain?
Yes, sir.
Tarun?
Yes, sir.
Tarun Talreja. Yes,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Just it's it's a suggestion to you that you go through the content whatever I am uploading as a PPT. You go through it. It helps you in better understanding the course. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll wind up here.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, any reference books, sir, to refer from? Do you have any reference book?
Yes, of course, we have given. I have given the course plan to you, and I have forwarded the PPT to you, the first lecture PPT where the books are mentioned. You can go through them.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so in the first PPT, the books are mentioned, even in the course plan also. I hope you have received the course plan. I have sent to section mail IDs.
Sir, we got it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.